for your strategy of how you're dealing with a lot of data, how you're dealing with huge data, we're going to get to that distinction in a moment. It's very important to understand how dependent or independent your data items is and where to draw the line. Independent data is data that doesn't immediately depend on some other information entity or collection. So think about a mailbox if you want to build an email system. All the data related to a particular user's mailbox is contained in that mailbox, and you can go and take that mailbox and move that to another server, given that you take all the contents with it. If you think about a customer relationship management system, an independent record is entity is a customer, and the customer's communication history with you, the customer's shipping addresses, all that information is anchored on that single customer. So the customer is an independent entity. It's a root entity that you anchor a lot of data around. The anchored data, so the dependent data, depends on its container, depends on its anchor, on its root object. So for instance, a piece of email, you can certainly look at that piece of email independently, but as you're storing it, you will store it in some context, and you will store it inside that mailbox. So moving the piece of email itself around doesn't make a lot of sense, and moving a shipping address of a customer around doesn't make a lot of sense, but you take the dependent objects and move them with the independent root objects. And then there's related data, which is loosely related to other entities without having a strict dependency. So an email thread within a mailbox would be one of those examples. But if you have a relationship with a customer, so you're selling something to a customer and the customer has bought a particular product, you might log this depending on what kinds of products you're selling, or you have a certain lead to sell a product to a particular customer. You might point to that customer, but you don't have to have the data co-located in the same store. You can point to the independent data island that sits in some completely different store, which means you're creating relationships within your system, but those relationships are not necessarily coupled to co-location of that data within the same store.